So the market value of a product reflects both the value of the product to consumers, as represented by demand, and also the cost of producing the product, which is represented by supply. So supply is the relationship between the price of a good and the quantity that people would like to sell. Just like with demand, we can use a mathematical equation to represent supply. Unlike demand, the supply curve will always be upward sloping. It will have a positive slope. Again, we will only have linear equations here, so the form y equals mx plus b is useful. If we look at this example, we have a supply equation for ice cream, P equals 0.25 Q. And if we want to plot that, the first thing we need to do is identify the y-intercept. So the y-intercept of this equation might at first seem a little tricky because there's no number that's on its own, but there's an implied plus 0 here. So we know that the y-intercept of this equation is 0. When P equals 0, Q also equals 0. Then you can just draw a straight line up from there to represent the supply curve. Sometimes I pay attention to the steepness or the slope of the supply and demand curve. In this case, they have the slopes of the same magnitude, so I know that they should be about the same amount of steepness. All right, using this equation, we can identify the quantity supplied for sale on the market for any price. So supply represents the relationship between all prices and the corresponding quantity supplied. To find the quantity supplied, we simply plug the price into our supply equation, and then we can solve for Q. So if the price is 4, then the quantity supplied will be 16. We'll sometimes use a Q sub S versus a Q sub D to differentiate between the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied. So at a price of 4, the point along the supply curve tells me how much will be supplied, and that is a quantity of 16. Likewise, at a price of 2, we would have a quantity supplied of 8. So unlike demand, you can see here that as the price decreases, the quantity supplied also decreases. The price is the benefit of selling something, right? It's the amount of money you get in exchange for the item. So as the price goes down, it's not worth the seller's time and effort, for some people at least, to sell the product. So the quantity available on the market also decreases. Demand is downward sloping, but supply is upward sloping. Why is supply upward sloping? Well, there are 2 reasons. The first is that as the price goes up, more firms will enter the market. People who previously didn't find it worth their time to go into this industry will now see that it's more profitable and enter the industry. Existing firms will also produce more. So as the price goes up and production becomes more profitable, existing firms will invest in expanding their level of production. Just like with demand, supply represents the seller's reservation price. That means it's something a little different than the buyer's reservation price. Recall that the buyer's reservation price was the value of the product to consumers or the benefit to society. Supply represents the lowest cost of production for the product. So when we're looking at demand and supply, we're really weighing the cost to society versus the benefit to society, just like day one cost benefit principle.